For those of you who watch this show regularly, you know that it's a little unusual for me to talk about myself and my personal life, but I wanted to share something with you today. Over the next couple of weeks, I will be away from this desk because my family is joining the nearly 1.5 million New Yorkers who, over the last dozen years, have chosen to call somewhere else home. It didn't need to end this way. I never thought that I would leave, but like thousands of other families, it's become abundantly clear our future is just not a priority for New York State. For decades, New York hasn't appreciated that it is in competition with other states, not just for jobs and capital, but for people as well. Leaders like Giuliani and Pataki and even Mike Bloomberg understood that to some degree, but as corporate welfare became the norm and the dependency class ballooned, politicians gobbled up the spoils of power and left the bulk of the population merely with the scraps. It's very emotional, leaving this place where my grandmother came for a better life in 1927 and realized her dream of owning her own business. The place that my father knew back when Brooklyn was the world and his Bensonhurst stickball games in the 1950s ran late on those summer nights. The place that I knew when suburban streets celebrated the arrival of a growing middle and working class. But those times of boundless opportunity when someone could come to New York with nothing but the clothes on their back and move into the middle class in one generation have been replaced by the cultural rot produced by the welfare state. The places that gave New York its unique character and special flavor are today mere shadows of their former selves, including those leafy suburban communities that once defined the American dream. Those communities have become victims of overdevelopment and traffic. They've been ravaged by teachers' unions and the resulting overtaxation. Developer dollars, union bosses, radical environmental groups, and insatiable bureaucracies combine to form an army against hard-working taxpayers, now constantly on the ropes. Even many of those union members, they take their Cadillac benefits and they head for the state line to live out their retirements somewhere else on our dime. The state budget here in New York has increased $100 billion since 2010, and the cancer of public debt is spreading unabated. The top 5% of earners pay 62% of the state income tax. Those who are leaving what has been called the vampire state have an average income of over $100,000, and many far above that. They are undoubtedly being replaced by those who make less and require more government services. The state has the highest combined tax burden in the nation, but in her recent op-ed, accidental Governor Kathy Hochul believes she's going to attract more companies and jobs and revenue by turning New York into an abortion sanctuary. Last year, Democrats in the state legislature budgeted $2.2 billion to dole out $15,600 payments of taxpayer money to illegal immigrants. Then, of course, there's the lack of tolerance. You know, this state once epitomized the diversity and opportunity that were hallmarks of the American experiment. Today, there is open disdain for those who espouse traditional constitutional values, the biblical worldview, or dare to question the left's latest social justice crusade, be it critical race theory, bail reform, the transgender craze, legalizing drugs, or the war on natural gas. As I've mentioned on this program before, discriminatory and unconstitutional COVID restrictions even cost my wife her job here. Democrats would rather focus on transgender driver's licenses and gun control measures that have no hope of ending the bloodshed on city streets than appreciating my family's ability to pay for it all. Through it all, we've also watched Republicans shrink from the fight, too often too busy fighting among themselves, capitulating and equivocating to truly advance reforms. We now sort of cling to this idea of New York, that romantic notion of the energy of the bustling city that gave rise to titans of industry and gave immigrants a chance to make it. We leave behind a lot of friends, some family, certainly favorite places, unmatched food and natural beauty that makes New York a remarkable place. We also leave armed with the knowledge of what the left can do to the quality of life and individual freedom any place that it gains a strong foothold. I will always encourage my children to be proud of being New Yorkers. They can learn so much about America's formula for greatness from the rich history and the people of New York, but I will also encourage them to learn from New York's failures and excesses as well. Sometimes change, kids, is necessary to continue to grow and advance. New York will always be New York. It's been down before, and I have no doubt that it will have a renaissance. There will be a red wave in November, and that may help. But the costs of waiting for Godot are simply too high. For my family, the bagels just aren't enough to keep us here. As an optimist, I believe that the lady in the harbor still stands for freedom and still lifts her lamp beside the golden door. That door is now unfortunately increasingly an exit, but her stoic countenance still sends us with a message that for those who are willing to work for it, for those who want more than a handout, for those who value freedom, the promise of America still lives on west of the Hudson River.